So welcome to the Founderville.vc podcast. This is episode number 5, and we're thrilled to have with us today a good friend of the podcast, a good friend of Founderville.vc, Mr. Peter Marsh. Peter's been around here in Greenville now for the last couple of years building out Flywheel Coworking. Flywheel Coworking is where we house the Startup Residence Program. This has been the culmination of years of work, primarily between Peter's firm, ourselves, and partners of ours at the Hill Institute of Innovation and Entrepreneurship. So Peter's got, I guess, about a 35-year career in entrepreneurship. I want to hear, in particular, the move from a philosophy major at Duke into the corporate world, and then the corporate world into architecture, because that is quite the jump, if I understand.
Yeah, it's thanks for first of all, thanks for having me on the podcast.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you guys in the flesh, in the studio, talking about entrepreneurship and the projects that we're working on together. So my journey, I'm going to try to do this quickly, but my journey kind of began with not wanting to follow a script in life. And I had the opportunity to attend some really fine higher educational institutions. I went to Dartmouth for 2 years, then transferred to Duke because I was following a Southern gal whose parents wouldn't let her go to college up north. And when I got out of college, I was on a pre-law. I was going to go to law school and become an attorney, which is a long tradition in my family. And the day of registration, I looked at how sad everybody looked, and how miserable they all felt. And, I said, I kind of feel the same way. And I stepped out of line. And this was in Boston, Massachusetts, which is really one of the centers of fine woodworking in the United States. And I had always been interested in woodworking. So I stepped out of line. I got a job in a cabinet making shop, and I apprenticed with a master cabinet maker for 2 years.
Wow.
And then ended up starting an architectural millwork company in Boston, doing fine woodworking around Cambridge and Boston and those environs. Sold that company, moved south to get into the furniture industry. And long story short, I founded a succession of companies in the furniture industry. One was successful, 2 were not successful, so I had that experience in that journey. Went into the commercial furniture industry, had a really great career with a company called Darran Furniture, which is a privately held manufacturer of case goods and seating, then went on to Steelcase, which is the largest manufacturer of commercial furniture in the industry, and traveled the United States, South America, and Europe, representing their high identity kind of fashion brands under an umbrella called Coalesce. So I had a long kind of extensive journey making things, designing things, and getting a deep understanding of the built environment. And at one point, it was just like I was traveling too much. I had young girls growing up. I wanted to be home more. So my wife and I decided to start a design practice of our own in the year 2000. That's grown to be a very successful architectural practice, full-service architectural firm that does corporate, industrial, healthcare design across the United States.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was quite a ride.
This is quite the journey. I didn't realize you had done some startup work prior to you and your wife's. I didn't know that.
I'm serial.
Okay, got it.
I am constantly kind of listening to the market, hearing about things, and understanding how to connect dots and start new opportunities for in different market areas. So I have the privilege to be part of a really amazing creative design team. And we do a lot of work with Fortune 500 companies around portfolio optimization and alternative officing type of solutions. In the 1990s and the early 2000s, it was all about trying to get more people in less square feet, right? And obviously, the employees didn't didn't like that a whole lot, being crammed into smaller and smaller workstations and smaller environments. So we were hired by a lot of the large banks in Charlotte in particular to do these research and alternative officing strategies. So when coworking started emerging in 2007 on the West Coast, we started tracking it and kind of discovered that it was a new officing strategy that was radically different from anything that had been tried before, and that people liked it. Mm-hmm. And the secret to co-working is you actually get a lot of density and a lot of employees able to use less square feet. So most co-working spaces, the average square foot per user is about 45 square feet, and in corporate America, it's more like 200 square feet. Sure. So it's a completely different approach to real estate that allows you to get a lot more use and utilization out of less square feet in an environment that people really enjoy being in. They love being in. And, this thing called the pandemic happened, right? And now corporate America is really interested in that solution for their employees. And what's happened is the office market, as you know, in the major markets is in the tank. Mm-hmm. There's high vacancy rates. The old way of bringing people together to in high performance environments just doesn't work anymore. It doesn't cut it for the employee population anymore. So the flex office market is the fastest growing component of the entire commercial real estate market because it's what people want. The terms are extremely flexible. You don't have to commit to long-term leases, and right now it's the fastest growing portion of the office market.
So you saw that opportunity pretty early on, and we're tracking it pretty well.
Yeah.
What does it look like today? What does Flywheel as a business model look like for you today?
So that's a great question. And again, this Flywheel kind of emanated from our architectural practice as an experiment, really. We saw coworking emerging, and we wanted to understand it inside out as an operator. Mm-hmm. So for better or for worse, in 2010, we decided to get into the business, open a space, and really learn, all the aspects of both designing and operating that type of environment. And we opened our first location in Winston-Salem, which is where we're headquartered, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, in 2014. And here's kind of the journey of entrepreneurship has a lot of accidents that happen. And some are good, some are bad. Right. But in the case of Flywheel, we were very fortunate to start in a second-tier size city. No, not in a major market, but a smaller city, smaller market, with an incredible academic partner. So one of our largest clients on the architectural practice is Wake Forest University, and we've been integral in helping them design and develop their innovation quarter, which is a very large, what we used to call a research park, but they're now called innovation districts because of the philosophy of live, work, play. So they're mixed-use districts that are deliberately designed to be place-making for entrepreneurship, places where people want to go. So when we decided to get into the co-working business, Wake Forest said, well, of course you're going to do it in our innovation quarter. You couldn't possibly do it downtown. And although the innovation quarter is an extension of the central business district in Winston-Salem. So, of course, we said yes. Right. You're not going to say no to your biggest client. So that was the second dot. The first dot was we want to explore co-working. The second dot was our largest client wanted to do it in an innovation district.
Sort of like landing an anchor tenant.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. With an academic partner that has extensive research departments and things of that nature. And then the third dot that happened was we had to figure out how to make money, right? Yeah. So it didn't work in the innovation quarter. The unit economics, the base lease cost was too high, and the unit economics just didn't work for that particular application of that business model. Mm-hmm. We ended up actually moving 3 times in Winston-Salem before we finally got our business model figured out and got the whole, economic model correctly iterated and figured out. So,
what did you unlock there? Because for a lot of founders, that iteration of trying to find unit economics, right, is a key.
Yeah.
And what did you see there that you knew you had to nail in order for the model to actually produce?
All right. So here comes the fourth dot that we had to connect, which was we found out in satellite markets to major cities and in second and third tier size cities, the pure population demographics don't support the traditional co-working model that the large operators like Industrious and a lot of the brands that you've heard of in the co-working industry, their model just doesn't work in these smaller markets because there just isn't a large enough population count and count of customer personas to just fill your space and be profitable. So when we opened in the Innovation Quarter in Winston-Salem, we did great for about 6 months, and then our membership levels started to plateau. And we had invested quite a lot of capital in our first location. To design and operate a co-working business the way that we do is a very capital-intensive business. And so, my partners and I were staring at each other like, we're screwed, basically. There's no way we're going to get out of this hole. And I said, well, what if we create companies to fill the seats in our space? And they looked at me like, what are you talking about? And I said, well, what if we get in the startup business? Just jump in the pool with both feet and learn how to swim in the world of entrepreneurship. And at that time in Winston-Salem, there were no programs, there was no ecosystem, there was nothing going on in support of entrepreneurship, which if you think about it is crazy because like many southern cities, the legacy industries like furniture and textiles and tobacco all gone, right?
Yeah.
And Wake Forest with the Innovation Quarter was the salvation of that city, to be quite blunt about it. But it was inward looking. It wasn't really engaging with the public sector and with the community that surrounded it. So we were the first portal of entrepreneurship into that whole milieu of innovation and entrepreneurship. I reached out to Chris Hively, who was operating a program called the Startup Factory in Winston-Salem, and was one of the first accelerators in the Southeast in the tradition of the Boulder, Colorado, and Techstars and that whole lineage. So I reached out to Chris and I said, "How does this work? How do you stimulate a startup ecosystem? How do you create a community of entrepreneurship? And importantly, how do you create companies that are going to be in my space?" Right. So
tenants.
he literally handed me the playbook. I mean, he said, "Here's how it works.
Here's how to
what
build
you need
before.
to do. Here's how to build before he wrote the book."
Before the book. Yeah.
So he was incredibly helpful, and so we put our shoulders to it. We raised 5 investment funds to invest in early stage companies. Those funds were investing pre-seed, so we were first money in, taking big bets on very early on with startups in the community. We ran an accelerator program called New Ventures. We developed all kinds of curriculum, around lean startup methodology. I mean, we were doing what a lot of communities were experimenting with at that time, but in the context of building a community in a space under one roof. That was what was really kind of new and different. And that after we figured that out, we figured out our business model.
So instead of just being a co-working space, you essentially became a community creator.
Correct. Creator of an entrepreneurship community and figuring out the ingredients that work the best to support that kind of environment. So our business model today is we look for, we continue to operate outside of the major markets in that's intentional and continues to be intentional because I really do believe that's where the opportunity is. You've heard of the rise of the rest and those type of things,
sure.
and we agree with that philosophy that there's tremendous opportunity for both investors and founders to operate outside the major markets.
Right.
Get more attention, you get more personal care, and you get more visibility to the investors because you're kind of standing out from the quantity that you run into in the major markets. So we continue to operate in the smaller market environment where we find the most welcome environment for stimulating entrepreneurship. I mean, cities like Greenville Greenville is really now a paradigm for other, smaller cities to follow in terms of what's been accomplished here, not only in the revitalization of the downtown and the city, but also all the efforts. Many programs.
You hopped a few times before
correct,
Greenville as well, right? So today, how many Flywheel centers are there?
So we've launched 9 total.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We operate 3 under our flagship brand, the Flywheel, and we have what we call an affiliate program because we're constantly getting phone calls from communities that don't fit our business model because they're too small. The demographics are too. Our business model is we need to see a population of 500,000 or more within a 20-minute drive of the center. But we constantly get phone calls from other communities that don't quite fit that model, that want to do their own thing. They want to stimulate their entrepreneurship activity in their community, and usually it's the Chamber of Commerce and Economic Development Corporation that calls us up. So we've created an affiliate program where we deliver our playbook and help them do it on their own under our advisement. Some of those are operated under a management agreement by my team, and then others we essentially just deliver the playbook and they pay a small annual fee to review their performance and continue to support what they're working on.
So when did Greenville come onto your radar?
Greenville was on my radar pretty early on.
Okay.
So our vision is to continue to develop these co-working innovation centers from Northern Virginia to north of Atlanta, so from D.C. essentially down to Georgia, to focus on the Southeast and essentially to follow the I-85 corridor, which truly is an innovation corridor. It has an incredibly high concentration of college and university and research institutions and a lot of entrepreneurial activity along that highway. We'll take deviations down 77 or 26 or whatever. Certainly, Columbia and Charleston, for example, meet our criteria and would be markets that we would love to operate in. We'll get there eventually. But we started in Winston-Salem. The next thing that happened was Davidson College called us up. And said, we've seen what you've been doing in Winston-Salem with Wake Forest University. We'd like to open our version of, a Flywheel here. Would you come down and help us design it, operate it for 2 years, and then turn it over? So we did that with Davidson College. It was a huge success. It was an incredibly profitable location because it's in the highest wealth zip code area in North Carolina. Just north of Charlotte, with a lot of C-suite type population around Lake Norman. So that kind of demonstrated to us that model works in those kind of markets with a really strong academic partner. And then the third thing that happened was we were recruited to take a look at Concord, North Carolina, which is a much more of a blue-collar kind of community, very traditional textile town. And the opportunity that we saw there was when we started looking at the demographics around that area. It has
NASCAR, baby.
Well, NASCAR. It's got NASCAR. Yeah, it's fun. It's got one of the highest concentration of software developers in North Carolina. Everybody thinks of Raleigh, right? That's where everybody is. All of the developers that work in Charlotte, most of them live north of Charlotte in the more affordable, smaller peripheral towns. So we were really attracted to there wasn't a premier higher ed institution involved in that location. So what we did, we told the economic development officials that we would develop a location there as long as the Chamber of Commerce, the EDC, the Small Business Center, and anybody that had anything to do with entrepreneurship in that community, if they would co-locate and be under our roof in that location. So
create the community, right?
Yeah, to create the wraparound resources that entrepreneurs need. So that was our first experiment with doing a location without a premier educational institution. UNC Charlotte is real close by and is a really close partner, but not in town, so to speak. And it worked really well. We serve a different kind of entrepreneurship community there than Greenville. It's very different kind of makeup. The majority of the entrepreneurs we serve there are, more Main Street type entrepreneurs, a lot of first timers, high mix of people of color and female entrepreneurs. It's like 87% of the folks that we're serving there fall into one of those two categories. Yeah. So, it led us to develop programming that was appropriate for the demand in that market from an entrepreneurship standpoint. But again, a very successful location. So by the time we finished up Concord, and by the way, we started construction right before the pandemic. We were about 6 months into it when the pandemic hit, and it was like, I think a lot of entrepreneurs will hit these kind of situations as they're growing and developing their business, which is, the Death Star shows up
Absolutely.
And parks right next to your business and
Yeah.
has you in its sights, right? And so
welcome to the struggle bus.
Yeah, exactly. We just looked at our partners and said, look, we're way too far into this. We're not backing out. We're going to finish the construction, and we're going to build the community during the pandemic and figure out how to make it happen. So the ramp up there was longer than our normal, membership development on-ramping, but it worked, and it proved our business model in a very tough situation.
Yeah. Not coincidentally, I believe you were already here by that point in Greenville.
Yeah, we were starting to scout Greenville. So the Greenville is like the perfect match for our business model in terms of demographics, the energy of the entrepreneurship ecosystem, the existing activity that's there, the level of startup activity here is very high. And you've got a premier academic institution in Furman. And close by, you've got, upstate USC, you've got Clemson nearby. So there's a lot of that higher ed concentration that really is important to feeding ideas and feeding the human resources that are required for entrepreneurship. When you do a regression analysis, right, on startups, successful founders, what do they look like? Most of them are mid-career professionals that have been on the struggle bus.
Yeah.
They don't typically come from privileged backgrounds. They've all, been forced to go through challenges in life. Yeah. And they tend to be, in their 30s, 40s, in terms of, if you look at all the startups in the United States, look at the founders, do the regression analysis. They tend to kind of fall into that general category. But what's super important about the college and university is the graduates, the undergraduates, and the folks in graduate programs. They are the future, and they are the human resources that those startups have got to be able to tap.
Got to build a team.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we refer to it as blending the whiskey. Right. So we look for a community that has a lot of throughput and flow of various kinds. The college and university throughput and flow, the idea flow, the supporting programs in the entrepreneurship ecosystem, and the population greater than 500,000 within a 20-minute drive of our facility. So Greenville has always been on our radar as a prime location. And what happened was I called Furman University just out of the blue and was connected to the leader of their innovation and entrepreneurship program. And I didn't know this at the time, but he was in Switzerland at a E&I conference for college and university. It was like, 3 a.m. when I got this guy on the phone.
Yeah.
He picked up the phone, and we talked for like 4 hours about what we do, what our model is, and what the opportunity was in Greenville. They were just head over heels excited about the whole opportunity. I got in front of the board of trustees, the president of the college, and then they spoke with Davidson College about their experience, and one thing led to another, and next thing you know, we're developing the project in Greenville. But that started in 2019.
Yeah. So that was about the time you and I met, I believe.
That's right.
Somewhere along in there, and tip of the hat to you for just persistence in staying committed to Greenville, even through the challenges and even through the pandemic. And I think this is I mentioned this to you earlier that to relate to other founders, no matter what stripe, no matter what business, we all get on that struggle bus.
Yeah.
And boy, I saw you get right on it and stay on it and get back off and get back on again.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about that experience, and particularly, I think you and Sean Hartness developing the vision for that property, and the machinations of that, if you will, on getting it to where it is today.
So, from on the development side of our projects, we look for what we call underutilized real estate assets. So these are distressed buildings, typically in revitalization zones. We try to locate our locations in hub zones so that there's tax advantages. Usually, we're looking for buildings that can be renovated with historic tax credits. Yeah. And there's also opportunities on the investor side. So investors that invest in startups in our locations have, the advantage of the
1202.
The 1202 on the capital gains, right? So, what happened with Furman in 2019? Furman was super excited. We were gung ho on getting this thing going, and originally we had the financial stack all figured out. We were ready to go. And then when the pandemic hit, before we got shovels in the ground, we had to completely recreate the financial stack for the project, basically. Originally, we were approaching it that Furman would master lease the property, and we would be the anchor tenant, that provided security on the deal. And when the pandemic hit, obviously everybody was there was a lot of uncertainty, and colleges and universities were looking in the mirror and wondering if
is anybody
their
coming
whole
back?
world was going to fall apart, right? So, the location that we selected is halfway between Furman University and downtown Greenville. Which we really liked because it was kind of a middle ground in a redevelopment zone, super low cost basis on the property. And the partner that we were connected with in the form of this property was Sean Hartness. And what's interesting about that location is the tradition of entrepreneurship that resides there. So that was the original Pepsi-Cola bottling franchise in Greenville, and it's where the Hartness family started their entrepreneurial journey, not just as a bottler of Pepsi, right, but as a tinkerer and an engineering mindset of there's got to be a better way and a faster way to fill these bottles up and to get them packed in crates and delivered to the customer. So they developed high-speed bottling. They developed and have developed the patented process for lifting bottles off of a production line, putting them in a delivery carton. And that led to Hartness International, which is built a huge enterprise around food and beverage engineering for manufacturing for those engineering production lines.
And a huge success and a fantastic, huge exit to
big
ITW.
exit. Right. Yeah. And now they're developing the Hartness Living Community, which is a big master plan kind of new urbanism community here in Greenville. So we were introduced to Sean. The building was very much a distressed real estate asset. It had been abandoned for a long time. And we were able to assemble land around it by purchasing what used to be the Piedmont Shirt Factory location, which is 7 acres adjacent to the location, with the vision of eventually developing it into a multi-building innovation district. And the phase 1 was the renovation of the historic assets on the property with Flywheel as the anchor tenant. Yeah. So we completely reset the financial stack around that concept, around the concept of basically Hartness underwriting the development of the project with historic tax credit advantage, which is a contribution of like 25 to 30% of the capital stack. Wow. Comes in the form of the historic tax credits and the mill bill associated with the former Piedmont Shirt Factory. But it took time. I mean, first I had to convince Sean we're not giving up. We're going to make this happen. So during the pandemic, we completely recreated the financial stack. And it's not easy. Doing what they did with these various tax programs is extremely complicated. It's not for the
and not without risk.
Yeah, and not without risk, and it's not for the meek, right? So to Sean's credit, and Jim Burns, who led the effort on his team, and Fred Dilworth, who is a graduate of Furman University, who we brought on as a shared employee to make the project happen, to get all the work done. We were able to recreate the financial stack, and we got shovels in the ground in 2023.
Yeah. Well, it is an absolutely stunning facility now.
Yeah.
And I'm thrilled that you're here.
Me too.
And can't imagine what this thing is going to look like, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, and excited for what that portends for our partnership.
Yeah.
So maybe you want to talk a little bit about the residence program and what we intend to do with Peter and with the Hill Institute.
Yeah, I mean, it's fantastic. I mean, obviously, we've come together to create the residence program. We've talked about it here on the podcast, and we've been talking about it nonstop over the last year. I mean, we intend to recruit, scores and scores of startups to Greenville over the next decade. That's the big picture. That's the mission. That's the goal, and we've said it out loud, so it's going to happen. But I think
sort of like Peter creating his own customers, right?
That's exactly right. Just say it enough, and
yeah, it'll happen.
But it's interesting because what you said about Winston-Salem originally was obviously the facility, the community, but it included programming, and then you guys raised funds,
right?
And that's really,
those are all the ingredients.
Look, we're not involved in real estate.
Yeah.
If I touch real estate, it goes down. Now, if it's tied to what we're doing here, raising capital to put in startups, we think we're doing a good job here.
Right.
That's the magic of this partnership that we have with you guys at Flywheel and Flywheel Foundation.
Yeah. So the Greenville location is bringing everything that we've learned together under one roof. And the key to what I think we're working on is the density of the founders, right? So eventually we are going to build a community of 250 to 300 founders in that location, just in phase 1 in terms of our membership community. So density is really important, getting a lot of founders in the same place at the same time so they learn from each other. My experience in our programs is the founders learn more from each other than they do from me. I try to teach them, and we deliver lots of content and lots of formal programming, but it's those daily conversations with each other that helps them accelerate their success. Yeah. And then the second key component is the residency. And that's what I love about the program that we're working on with you is all of the communities in the Southeast have some entrepreneurial efforts going on. They have entrepreneurship service organizations, accelerator programs, boot camps, things of that nature going on. And what tends to happen is an entrepreneur, rightly so, bounces from one program to another looking for the the resources that they need to be successful. But what is rarely provided is that longer-term residency in a culture of entrepreneurship with a dense community of founders surrounding it, and all the wraparound resources, the capital, the educational content, the programming, the mentors are extremely important, which is why I love the venture studio model, by the way. Because the venture studio model ensures that there's continuing real engagement with the founders. You're not just doing a 12-week program and then you're on your own. That continuity of support is really important for startup success in terms of what we've observed and what we've experienced. So that's the business that Flywheel is in, really, is providing a residency, a long enough residency for founders to be in an environment that provides all of those resources for 18, 24 months. In some cases, I mean, we've got members in Winston-Salem that have been with us for over 10 years. And very successful startups, I might add, that are now essentially small business enterprises with a lot of employees.
It's not time based; it's goal based. I mean, our friends at the Brickyard in Chattanooga spend a lot of time, been super kind with their time, and part of what we're doing is this is not a traditional 12-week accelerator or whatever it might be. There's no time. It could be you could be here for a year, it could be 3 years. It's goal based. It's $1 million in ARR. It's you want to close a $4 million Series A, whatever that might be. We want to provide the support to make that happen. And I think the fact that we have 45 investors, living right here, all of whom have got deep experience and support that could add value, and the huge majority of them want to add value. They want to participate. They have participated in the past. I think bringing all those ingredients together, we should be able to bake a pretty nice cake here.
Yeah, I think so, and I applaud you guys for the program that you're designing, because it's a new offering in the community that hasn't been here before, and it is the kind of runway mentality, creating that longer term runway that founders need for that continuity of support. So I love the word resonance, because essentially we're a hospitality business. We provide resonance for entrepreneurs, to pursue their passions, their purpose, and their dreams. And what we provide is that intentional curation of the community, and we listen really carefully to the market, what the market is telling us, what the other entrepreneurship service organizations are telling us. Where are the gaps? Where can we constructively contribute to the entrepreneurial activity in the community? So that's what Founderville Startup Residence Program is. That is a perfect example of, again, connecting dots and filling gaps in the resources that are being offered.
Yeah, I think we've been able to pull together a lot of different pieces of the puzzle. It's the co-working space, it's the environment, it's the community that you're creating. It's the service provider support that we're garnering throughout Greenville. A lot of service providers jumping in. It's the fund, the ability to be able to invest. And then we've got great founders here. We have incredible founders here, most of whom, by the way, are in their 30s and 40s, I think, across the board.
And many of which are now landing with Flywheel in the facility.
Yeah, we've got a lot of your companies now locating in the facility.
And hopefully more to come. I mean, I think it's a powerful part of the offering as we talk about what we can bring to the table. Flywheel Coworking is part of that.
And the fact that Furman's Hill Institute and Center for Innovative Leadership are based there. So Furman is a part of the Flywheel space with the Furman Innovation Lab. A good example of how quickly the dots get connected at Flywheel is, we are offering this financial course in North Carolina. I got an email from Ken Brower, who saw the posting in our newsletter and said, "We really need this in Greenville." So the next thing I know, I mentioned it to Brian Davis with the Hill Institute. Next thing I know, Eric Cooperman has designed the curriculum literally the same day. He's outlined the entire curriculum. We've reached out to the SBDC to help us with instructors and things of that nature. Ken comes to do a mentoring session. This is all happening in the same day. I show him the curriculum. I said, what do you think? He said, well, I think I would rearrange this or that. And we're going to be launching the course this fall.
That's fantastic. And that's
great.
I mean, that's what's needed. I mean, time and time again, you're right. The founders can get themselves in trouble just not understanding the very basics of financials. Yeah. From the income statement to cash flow to taxing.
It's just such a great example of how the network works.
Yeah. Right.
When you want it to. When you're trying to make those connections, just you can get a lot of stuff done quickly.
And the efficiency of having it in, the placemaking for entrepreneurship, the efficiency of having it all as much as possible under one roof.
One of the things that we feel strongly about in what we've done with the first group of portfolio companies is in real life, right? Mm-hmm. The thesis being that we only invest in companies in Greenville, founded in Greenville, run in Greenville, backed by Greenville backers.
Right.
Because we believe in that eyeball to eyeball, breathing the same air is important. There's energy that's created there.
Right.
There's connections that spark that just don't happen over Zoom. And if you have to delay it, like I'm going to set a meeting, I'll fly out there to see you, we'll have this structured meeting, blah, 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 blah. Sparks don't fly like that. And we think sparks do fly in this kind of arrangement. And that's what we're hoping to do with the residence program is people who believe that want to show up and be in the same air will get that backing and be around other founders that are creating sparks.
Yeah, I think Greenville has a unique opportunity for the residence program to be successful in attracting founders from throughout the Southeast to come to Greenville and stay in Greenville because first of all, the entire ecosystem here is so strong, but secondly, the quality of life here and just the what the community has done to revitalize itself is head and shoulders ahead of many southeastern cities.
Well, it's always good to hear.
Yeah,
always
absolutely.
good to hear.
Yeah.
Well, this has been fantastic, Peter.
Yeah,
can't thank you enough for coming out and just being a part of Greenville, being a part of the ecosystem, everything you've been given to our beautiful city. We're thrilled.
Thank you very much for bringing your talent here.
Yeah, thank you guys for what you're doing and you're great partners.
Appreciate it.
Let's get a lot of great founders down here to Greenville and get them started.
That's the name of the game.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Appreciate you tuning in to Founderville.vc podcast with Peter Marsh. Thanks.